everyone and welcome to the live stream. Yep, it's the scenery stream and it's a week early this week because next week I'm going on a steam train. It's kind of a lights festival one, so I thought I should get this in before we get too busy for Christmas. So welcome to everybody in chat. I've seen loads of people scrolling in from all over the world already. It's great to have you all here. And I'm just looking forward to talking about a swamp again. Don't worry, we've got a couple more weeks, well, months as it is we're doing, a couple more months left on Dagobah, and then I think we'll be looking for new ideas. So let's just have a quick look who's in. This should be cool. Right. Well, hello to everybody. There's just so many names going past that I don't really say them all because I might miss someone out, and I would rather not say anybody than miss one person out, because that's always you that gets missed out, isn't it? So this week it's continuing Dagobah, and I felt a bit like all I really did was paint brown on it for several days because it took so long to paint. It's such a big diorama. But don't worry, it's at fast speed, so you don't have to sit through me painting brown for 2 solid days, because that would be really boring. And much as I love doing scenery, put some music on, kind of lose myself, it's not that exciting to watch, is it? So, just keeping an eye on the chat. It's mostly just people saying hello, so I'll let everyone get settled in. The video is about an hour and a half, and I thought we'd also talk this week about just how to make it less expensive. People often say to me, oh, you have all this expensive stuff and you buy all this stuff and I can't afford it. And with Christmas coming up, you'll either be getting something really exciting under the Christmas tree, maybe a new kit, but does that leave a lot of money left over for scenery? And does it need to? So all exciting questions that hopefully we'll get to later on in the stream, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your money saving tips are. So do think about how you might save money, materials you've used that were free, and I've got quite a few, so I suspect you all have too. Yeah, you don't have to watch the paint dry, Draw 21, because I've edited that out. You're okay. And actually, one of my tips, I use a hairdryer a lot if it's not that crucial. It can make washes dry really funny and leave tide marks, but for just normal paint, a hairdryer is brilliant as long as you don't melt. I did once melt a set of windows with very fine plastic mullions because I used too hot a setting, but it speeds everything up when I'm desperately trying to get on to add a wash over the top of something I've just painted. It doesn't necessarily get into all the gaps, but it certainly gets the top bits. Excellent. What did you do on a Sunday night? Watch paint dry on YouTube. I can download you the full video. Actually, I don't even bother recording it now. I get to a certain stage where I record quite a lot of doing it and then just think this is getting really boring for people to watch. So I stopped recording at that point. So sorry, no videos of paint drying this evening. So before we get started, I wanted to talk, as I said, about how we might save money on scenery. Just because I get a comment on every 10th video where I might have used an expensive product or something and people go, oh, it's really expensive and, you know, I can't do that. And one of my popular videos is Cheap and Easy Water, where I make water out of PVA glue. And the big comment is it goes white again sometimes if it gets damp, but generally PVA glue is my go-to material for gluing. I use it for almost everything, stuff I shouldn't use. And it's really cheap, white glue, and it doesn't really matter which one you get because they all work for scenery. You can go to Mod Podge if you want something that doesn't re-wet later, if you can do layer upon layer and it's crucial, like if you're adding foliage. But I've done 99% of my gluing in my life with white glue, and that includes static grass, adding it as a plasticizer to stop things cracking. You'll notice last time on the trees I'd added it into the paper mache to stop it cracking and to help it stick a little bit more. So white glue, very cheap, and my #1 material for scenery. But I've been writing my tools and materials chapter for my ebook that I'm writing incredibly slowly, so please don't ask when it's coming out because I have no idea, it's just going so slowly. And I was looking at some of the materials, and one section I had was found materials, just because it's so much cheaper if you can find them than if you have to go and buy them. So hold that thought. Thanks, Andy, on the hair colour. Yeah, it's getting lighter. It's actually getting closer to my real hair colour. I used to dye it darker because I like darker hair, but I thought, hey, getting older, probably should go a bit paler. Yep, and the Christmas shatter is Let me say that again. The Christmas sweater is on. Baps Limoges. Sounds a bit weird. But yeah, I thought I'd better get it out as this is my Christmas stream effectively. And I don't go to work now anymore, so I don't get a Christmas jumper day to wear them. And I have 2 or 3. I also have a little reindeer hoodie with little antlers. I don't get anywhere to wear them, so I'm wearing them whenever I go out at the moment to get the mileage out of them. Where are we going? Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Dried tea leaves for undergrowth and around the base of tree. That's from John Crooks as a suggestion. It's brilliant. There's more than one set of tea leaves though. And do you use your tea leaves out of the tea bag before you've used them for tea, or do you use them afterwards? And I know people that do both. My favourite tea leaves are chamomile tea leaves, used straight out the bag before they've been wet. They come out like small fine leaves, but more like leaf litter. And because they're very pale, if you want to add a bit of a brown wash on them, you can darken them down as well, which is what I've done on this. So chamomile tea leaves are definitely my favourite. And I found a box that I'd forgotten that were 3 years out of date, so I'm still using those up. Because, you know, a tea bag goes a long way if it's scatter. It's not too bad. But also, if you wanted to use them as leaves, they're very like the hecky leaves, then you could paint them green as well with an airbrush afterwards. Wouldn't like to paint them beforehand, but afterwards you can put a nice fine dusting of a green on them, I suspect, as well. So let's keep going down. There's a bit of translation going on. I missed that. The audio's not in sync, says Scale Modelling USA. That's an interesting one because sometimes it's in sync for some people and not for others, and I don't understand why. I recorded this and played it back when I was first setting it up, and it was out of sync quite a bit. But then when I went live saying I can't get it to go in sync, whatever I did, it never quite went sync. It was really divided on the first stream. Some people said it's in sync and some people said, oh no, it's not in sync. So I don't really know what to do or why it does it, but it's fine for some people. So I don't know what to do. Any suggestions, put them in the chat, please. So Jaw21 asks, can you use outside garden dirt for dirt? Yes. The only caveat I'll say is my garden is quite a dark, rich colour. So I can go and dig it up there. I mean, it's got gravel and bark all over it, so it's quite hard. So my mum had, she had some new beds and she had some garden soil delivered, and it's much sandier than mine, which is solid clay and quite hard to dig, or it's full of organic stuff to make sure you can actually dig it, which is what I've mulch I've put on the garden over the years. So mine is actually my mum's, and it's a bought commercial topsoil, and it's quite sandy, and that again you'll see this week in here. And I used it for the sort of forest base, and I think it's a great colour for forests where there's a lot of leaf mulch. If you're trying to do a drier, sandier soil, I find my garden soil just won't cut it. So what do? Well, you can mix it with tile grout to get a different colour. Luke Towan does that with his. I notice he always goes half and half tile grout and garden soil. Some people go and dig it from different locations, and I think we've talked about the baseball diamonds and American men going and digging up baseball diamonds in the dead of night to get decent soil, because apparently it's brilliant there. But you can actually also buy it by the bag, and if you want to talk to your local sports person, if you're in America and you have a baseball diamond, they'll probably tell you where they get theirs rather than digging up the kids' playgrounds. You know, it's a thing. But sweepings of roads are quite good. They're sort of a fine dust that's churned up by cars, and it is quite fine. So gutters are brilliant. I go along and I take plastic bags with me quite often in the autumn and pick loads of stuff out of the gutters, because it's often quite fine. You get twigs, you get detritus. It's brilliant. So gutter diving on the edge of roads. I mean, we're not talking main roads here. We're talking nice leafy avenues that I'm walking around at lunchtime. So they're quite good as well. But my garden soil, not really the colour I want quite often, so I rarely use it. Right, here we go. Timber Surf, cheapest PVA is from Builder Supplies, about £10 for 5 litres. That's brilliant. I actually got 10 litres for about £18 on Amazon. And I bought 10 litres. I've nearly finished my 5 litres I bought last year. I go through it quite quickly because I use it so much. I use it in it, and also if I'm using tar grout as a slurry or a paste, I'll have added it to that. I've added it into paper mache. I've added it to loads and loads of stuff. I use it for sealing, just so much. So yeah, Builders Merchants though. I buy my super glue from Builders Merchants on Amazon because I haven't been to builders merchants in ages, but I'd buy my super glue there as well because you don't need to pay for the expensive stuff. And the last Gorilla super glue I bought was already dried in the bottles practically by the time I got it, so it just never really came out. So definitely builders merchants and supplies have PVA, and they have super glue that is just as good as anything you'll get elsewhere. Right, so Screwfix, probably Screwfix. I interview in the UK, Screwfix, definitely. I've used mixed herbs before now. I've used old mixed herbs because I don't really cook, so my mixed herbs are all going off, and I had basil and parsley. And they're still green several years later in the bottle. What I don't know, and I'd be intrigued to find out by doing a test, but I haven't got the patience, is how long it takes them to lose that greenery when they're out in the normal atmosphere, whether it's being in a bottle has protected them or whether they remained green elsewhere. Not a problem if you don't mind airbrushing in a bit, if it goes off colour, but if it's very important it stays green, I'd just like to know that it's going to stay green before I put it on. But yeah, dried herbs are very good. But my parsley was especially green. I was just thinking, I'm sure you won't stay that green in 10 years' time, but still. So Andy T says, so you have an audio sponge hanging over the photos? Yes, I do. I put them up because I was having real problems, and then, like a Durbrain, I realised I got my microphone facing the wrong way. So the reason it was really echoey was it was bouncing off the screen, and all it was hearing was my bounce off the screen. But I put them up there because it's a really hard surface room. It's like, and I put a tablecloth on and things like that to try and make it less bouncy and echoey. I'm not sure it succeeds, but it's the best I can do, and I can't do a studio per se. I just don't have enough space. Right, so Tim, I've used mixed herbs and tea a bit. I just don't do much undergrowth with, but they both did well. That's good. They do work, they are really good. Yes, Screwfix or any builder's merchant. Steer clear of B&Q as Dial is probably watered down. Dial is very watered down, but I used it for something that I wanted really watered down. I used it up. The other thing is, if they're too watery and you use half of them, they do go mouldy. I've had the cheaper, thinner ones go mouldy on me. So just to watch that out, use them up if you're going to. Dials is thinner because it's for sealing walls, so it's made to be absorbed into plaster. So it's great for something where you know it's going to be absorbed. But if you want it slightly thicker, it's the wrong type. It's not made for that. Stephen was working near Peterhead. It's not called the Blue Tune for nothing. Ooh, yeah, it's cold up north. Okay, so Norm doesn't think it's the audio sponges. Right, garden soil needs baking to dry it out and sterilise it. The sieve for various grades. It's an interesting one. I didn't sterilise mine. It came, and it's been, I mean, I've had it 5-6 years now, and I don't think there's any bugs left in it alive. It is bone dry, and my oven has models on top of it, so I don't really use it. But everyone recommends you sterilise it, so I will recommend that you do that, even though I personally have never done it. And I have sieves. You can buy garden soil sieves, you can use tea strainers, sieves, just, I have every scale. And the other thing I used them for recently, I say recently, like 3 years ago, I bought some slate dust. It's very, very fine slate chippings all the way down to dust for a slate quarry layout. And I sieved it down to absolutely almost powder. And I've got quite big chunks as well. And I got that from just a normal garden centre. It was Earlswood Garden Centre up near me. And it was great, you know, it's really fine, almost like powder flour at one end, and then sort of small chippings, still probably too large for the average, but you can get all the grades in between, so it's really, really useful if you want that kind of texture. Blown sand from the roadside. I think that when I'm talking about dirt in gutters, I'm guessing that probably is the same sort of stuff, isn't it? Hi, Anfield. Or Lee, as we can call you. Mud silt gravel from the side of a river stream is far better than soil. I can imagine that because it's sedimented out, so it's probably got less organic matter in that's more likely to float. So that's good. Do people recognise you from YouTube, and if so, how often? That's from Nigel. Yes, and it depends. So I went through a phase of I did the Great Model Railway Challenge, and I got recognised. I tell you, I would be sitting in Costa or McDonald's and men would come up to me and go, "Are you Kathy Miller?" And I'd be like, "Yes." And they'd be really chuffed that they see me. The lady in the NEC recognised me. She was in the Martins that you go to, newsagents just outside, and Worley was just very much so. But it's quite funny because people come up to me in the States when I used to go to conventions. People would go, "Oh, hi, Kathy," and they'd expect you to know them. And the trouble is, I don't know the people who watch me quite often. Or I might recognise the name, but I don't know the face. So it would be really funny because they'd be like, "Hi, Kathy, we've spoken." And I'd be like, "I'm sorry, who are you?" And they'd say who they were, and I'd often be able to put a name to a face. But not always, because I'm really bad on names and faces. So yeah, if I ever don't recognise your name, please don't be offended, please. But yeah, I do get recognised. I think the last time was about 2 years ago because we've had COVID since then. So I've not been recognised recently. But it's funny because my friend said to me last night, we were having a pizza, and she goes, "My guy at work, he's really excited that I know you because he recognises you from the Great Milwaukee Challenge." So I was like, how did that even come up in conversation? And she bought me a t-shirt, and it started with that because it was a Stormtrooper t-shirt. So a lot of people do, yes. And I always try and, sort of have a time to chat with people. And I wish sometimes you could have longer, but sometimes you're just dashing. They don't want to interrupt, which is very sweet, actually. So if you want liquid super glue, I found the best is the Pound Shop. It's really like water and flows everywhere. Comes in multiple small bottles too, which is handy. So that's from Tim. I like the thicker stuff. I like the gel stuff for what I do. I don't use the thin stuff as much, but Pound Shop then if you want thin stuff. Tamsin P brought a kilogram bag of mixed herbs for his jungle. I think their jungle. I think that probably was too much. I've got little bottles this big and they're still going on some of my stuff. Train kitchen, would I still consider myself a model railroad? Yes, I've had a year off basically. Starting next year, I actually have quite a few model railroad plans, which I'll say more about when they firm up. And it will be very obvious. I've been kind of cramming the other stuff in on the run up to that in some ways, because for the last 2 or 3 months I've been working on a project which is model railroad related, which I can't talk about yet. And if that comes off, you'll see a lot more model railroads on the channel and the live streams. And I was thinking, I've not been doing Port du Nord because I'm stuck on the track work. If anybody wants to take it away and do my track work for me, please do. I'm not very good on track work that's hand laid with 3D printed points that are just causing me problems. So it's not been great. And so it's stalled. My layout isn't great for videoing, and it's 90% midway done. So there's nothing from start to finish, which is really what's better for doing tutorials and, stuff for YouTube. So the home layout's really difficult, and it's also above 30 degrees for a lot of the summer. So you can't really film there for most of the year. Even on a day like today, if it's sunny, it can get quite hot up there. So yes, you will see a lot more, and it will be coming out. And I was wondering about doing Port du Nord because the next live stream starting, I think I've got another month of doing the X-Wing and the people, and then a final month of doing all the water effects probably with the resin and then the drippy water. In which case after that, so that's January, February, so starting March will be Port du Nord on here, which will give me a bit of time to get it started. But if I go full time on this other job, then they still want me to do my YouTube, so I will still be doing YouTube. Maybe partly in the week as well, we'll see, depending what it is I'm doing for them. And in which case that will be all model railroad. So you'll see a lot more of that coming through. So yes, I just had a year off. I kind of burnt out on it and I stalled on 2 projects. So I am, but I haven't done a lot recently. I get that. Did I go to Scale Model World in Telford in November this year? I didn't. Wasn't really doing shows at the time, so I haven't. We've got a recommendation from Tamsin P on Dials, which is B&Q's home brand if you're in the UK. Wood glue is okay. I've used that, I think, a few times. I've got Gorilla at the moment. Hi, Alltag in Germany. So, yeah. Love it. So, Dreamcore says, love it a lot, Yoda would. Let's hope. Let's hope he does. He'll be on there next time. Oh, don't worry about being late, and it's always there on catch up as well if you don't manage a stream. Please, so that's the Mad Welshman was worrying about being late, but hey, we all have lives, and it's not a great time. I rarely watch live streams live, I'm just going to confess, because I watch them later. I often put them on when I'm modelling, but I just, by the evening, I'm not sitting down to watch YouTube, I'm often watching TV, so. So let's go down, and then I've got to keep an eye on the time. I'm going to put the movie to play in the background and then catch up and chat in a minute. So I shrink, and here we go, painting. There's a lot of painting in this. So I use artist acrylic for all my painting, and I thin it so you don't get brush marks. And I also thinned it quite a bit on this to get it into all those gaps. I wondered whether I should have painted before I put the vines on. Short answer, yes. Getting it into some of those places with the vines there was quite hard. It's fine by the end because I put washes on, but every now and then I see it, especially around the bottom, I see a glimpse of foil still, and I had to kind of try and pile the soil up against it when I put the soil on to hide it. So there's quite a lot of views of sort of the corner of my head and brown paint going on. But it's not any brown paint, it's raw umber. It's always my go-to base colour because it's dark, so it looks like a shadow if it shows through. And I buy it in those really big pots, so it's cheaper, talking about that. And it's just whatever's cheap on Amazon or Hobbycraft, wherever I'm going when it runs out. So it's definitely important to base coat everything in case your later coats show through. And I've fallen foul of having white sculpt mold show through if you're not careful, and then you have to put more tar grout on. But for this, it's actually the base wood colour. So I've kind of gone with the darkest colour, and I'm going to dry brush the lighter colours over the top in 10 minutes time. So whilst that's running and you get the joys of watching me paint, that was a disposable paintbrush from Hobbycraft. It came in a bag. It's one of my favourite paintbrushes. It's like indestructible nylon bristles, and I use it all the time. So definitely, you know, those bags of disposable brushes come with loads of different types. It's worth working out which ones you really like sometimes, and they weren't expensive. So let's sneak back to the chat. Stephen, we spoke at Worley. I had to pick up the courage to talk to you, but I bottled out of talking to Jenny Kirk, which is irrational. You know, no, I know Jenny from the Great Model Railway Challenge, yeah. People, I mean, the only time I got ratty was when I was desperately trying to get to the toilet or something, and I'd get a stream of people, and I'd be like, nope, the balada's saying, I'm sorry, you're going to have to wait till I come back out. Other than that, I really don't mind. Every now and then I had to be somewhere, and I'd just say, oh, I'm sorry, I've got to be somewhere. But it's really nice to talk to people, and I talk. You can see from this, I can talk for 2 hours here quite happily, so I can talk all the time to people, and it's really great to hear what people are up to. I love it when people send me photos and then sort of keep in touch a bit, showing me what they're doing and how they've applied things. So I'm always happy if people drop me a mail or something, mostly through Instagram or Facebook generally, but you can get me through my website. Apparently it doesn't have an email, but you can get me through my website or YouTube as well. So, looking at Train Kitchen, cool, looking forward to the upcoming track action. I am not looking forward to it. I've put this off for 2 years. I started this the first year I did the Great Model Railway Challenge for Steve Flynn. I was going to write him 12 articles. He's retired as an editor now. I'll probably still write the articles with a book on it or something, or an e-book on how I did it. One of the reasons it stalled, if I'm honest, I don't like what I've done so far. I tried loads of new materials and most of them were epic fails, but they're baked into it and I can't change it. So I've got some really weird stuff in there, and we'll talk about that on the first live stream rather than me talking about it when I'm doing brown paint. So, acrylic is good to use. I will say, acrylic paint, that's from Lee, Anfield Road Layout in the Loft if you don't know his name. Acrylic is good to use, yes. I'm going to stop using my acrylic washes as much. I don't mind them on this, but I tried them on the backdrop, and it's the very last thing you'll see because I failed, and I'm still waiting for the fourth attempt of backdrop that I did to dry, because I used oils in the end to get them to blend. It's still drying. The top is dry now, but the side is where it kind of was thicker. If I wipe past it, I've got blue paint all over myself, goodness knows how many times. So yeah, acrylic's great. It's so easy to use. And because you don't need to wait for it to dry, you do need to wait for it to dry, but if you're putting it over sculpt mould, you can put it over while the sculpt mold's still damp, so you can get on quite quickly as well. So, ATSF Ventus Spur N-Scaler. Greetings from across the pond. Hi, ATSF. Oh, hi. Tom Piling from the United States. Is that Pilling? Great to meet you, Tom. I love all your tutorials, they're the best. Thank you so much. Oh, a lot of my videos haven't done well this year. I think it's because I'm not doing trains, or scenery. So I am going back to more scenery. I mean, the last one did right with the water splash, but yeah, YouTube does love to tell me that my regular viewers don't like them. So don't worry, there'll be a lot more trains. The one thing I would like to do is, someone I know that I'm tutoring is doing some petite properties, and they do these little MDF bases, but you're free to put whatever texture you like on them. They leave them without brick texture. I was wondering about doing a little village with those at some point as well. So that's one that might come on a live stream. Just because I thought it's a different building every month. You've got half timbered, you've got brick, you've got stone. So you could come up with some quite nice techniques. And a lot of people do buildings in their time. So that might well come as well. Where is the thumb? I'm on my phone at the moment and can't see one, thanks. What thumb? Okay. Sorry. Hi from New Zealand. Well, hi folks. So, hi everybody who's coming in. That was Alan and Sherilyn. Found it impressed. Oh, the thumb for thumbs up. Right, sorry, I'm just thinking, what thumb? Oh, if it suddenly does a weird close-up on the video that's playing, it's because I'm recording that. I will do a final YouTube video that's not on my live stream with complete beginning to end in YouTube style, you know, with all the much shorter. So it'll be about 15 minutes long, and you guys will have sat through hours of it, but just summing it all up in 15 minutes for everybody else. Just because I've got it all recorded in 4K and this only goes out in 1080. So I thought it'd be nice to use that in the end, especially as I'm recording it all up front. And I will mention at the bottom right, you can see there's some bits trailing over the foam. I'm going to put the backdrop, well it's not, it's the fascia at that point, the fascia underneath those, so they kind of come over it just as an effect. So they're just in mid-air at the moment for that reason. The Mad Welshman, close the chat temporarily to find the like button. Okay. I thank you for liking it, guys. I do appreciate it. And thank you to my moderators for reminding everybody to like it. They've hidden dislikes, apparently. I never looked at them. You know, if people didn't want to like it. People were normally rude enough to write it if they don't like it anyway. So, yeah, you know, I just leave it there and don't press heart on it. Stephen, am I a Brummie lass? Yes, I am. So he wants to know about my accent. So I was born in Chester, but I moved to halfway between Birmingham and Warwick when I was 6, and I've been here ever since. But I went to school in King Edward's, which is in Edgbaston in Birmingham. So I've definitely got a bit of a Brummie. I've got a Brummie and I do say Birmingham, but I don't say buzz or island. I often say roundabout, whereas round here they'll say island generally. And I think that's because my parents don't say it. And I must have called them roundabouts from them. But I definitely do have a Brummie. Whereas my mum says grass and bath, I will say grass and bath. Even the place I call Bath, which she doesn't approve of. There we go. Parents are there to support your grammar. Listen to them. So, where have we got to? I find every project goes through a, well, this is bad stage at some point. Tim, I have some projects I get to the end of and think, that was bad. Just the whole end of it. And my Hulk versus Thor just didn't come out like I thought it would in my head. And I just wasn't happy with it. But, you know, there we go. Sometimes just things don't work. And that's fine. It's a learning point. Yes, if you want it to do well on YouTube, you're going to be disappointed. But actually, you learn from everything. And if you don't make mistakes, you're not going to learn. So, but this is definitely in the bad stage at the moment, isn't it? It's just, yeah, really bad looking. It does look better by the end, I promise you. Keep watching, it will improve. All my horse customs have a very ugly stage, from Vez Hopkins. Yeah, it's the first stage that goes on. The first coat of paint is never even, it always looks bad. And especially when it's this thin, it's running down, so it's leaving the sort of surfaces, which actually isn't such a problem on this. It leaves them kind of with the weird green, which was just a green I'd had mixed but then didn't like. It was too mineral looking. It didn't look organic enough. So yeah. No dislike yet for watching paint dry. Oh, it's good. Yeah, it's always good. There's some people I know who put up a live stream and even before it's gone live, they've got 4 dislikes. It's like, well, you can't see it now. Anyway, they've hidden them. But, you know, it's just people are weird sometimes about that. So Tim, I just try and make sure if it isn't at the end, although I have abandoned stuff before when it wasn't working, I've redone stuff. And I think one of the things you learn as a modeler is you have to redo stuff and it's okay. So that's why I bought Norwick stall, because really I want to redo it, but I can't be bothered to undo everything and redo it. So it'll probably get done as it is, and I may even get rid of it as soon as it's done because I just haven't got the space for it. And I'm not being funny, it's in the middle of my kitchen floor, the backdrop is. It's been there since I built it that autumn after the first Great Model Railway Challenge. Was that 2017? Was it that was 2018? I've been falling over it. It's nearly 2020. I've been falling over it for 3 years now. It's in the middle of my kitchen floor, and it's like C-shaped. And I walk around it every day, and I can't wait for it to go somewhere. And the rest of it's in my lounge. People say, "Where do you put all your stuff?" And if I'm being short in the answer, I say shelves. If I'm not being short, I'm like lounge floor. Yeah, that's on the lounge. It's sort of lent against the something at the moment, and it's all warping out slightly because of what I made it out of. Yeah. Not good, but it will get finished and it will look good in the photos, because that's the joy of YouTube and photographs. You can make it look good. Honest. Thanks, Lee. Looking good. Keep up the good work. Now, this is, I probably should have cut this a bit shorter, actually, this brown paint. Don't worry, it suddenly just cuts out in a minute and you'll be like, oh, thank goodness, she's gone past the brown paint. But there is something to be said about size of dioramas. So I did this size because I wanted to put a 1:48 scale X-Wing in, and I wanted that size so I could do decent water splashing. And if you've seen my recent Mongoose, my Halo Mongoose water splash, I used UV resin, and I'll be using it on this as well, I think, because it worked really well. And I bought some more off Amazon because Green Stuff World sent me a bottle or two, but I've almost used it up, and it's great stuff. It just gets hot, so I won't want to use it on anything that can't get hot, because it actually almost boils. I've noticed this when I did a rainbow for a mini spaceman. I put powder in it for pigment, fluorescent, and it almost boiled it and it would bubble. So it is quite weird. You can, if you get it on you, you touch it, it is hot when it's curing. So that's definitely going on here. I mean, 3D print resin, the heat's not a problem, so it isn't an issue. And I'm putting the backdrops on at the end of this, so they're going to be a little bit proud of the base that's there, and then I'm going to run the resin water up to them. They're going to act as the dam for it, so I don't need to dam it because it's only going to be a thin skim of resin water, kind of yucky coloured stuff. But I can't do that till I've got the X-Wing in place, because I want to put the acrylic rods that hold it up. I mean, it may not have to be there, it may just have to be the acrylic rods, but I want those there in place, ready for it, and I haven't built it yet, it's still in pieces. I've got like 6 projects 3D printed now, all sat on the side, all being worked on. Not really. Some of them actually, started now, but others haven't. So, Martha Stewart, the swamp's looking good as my Thanksgiving pumpkin pies. I hope your pumpkin pies are good then. I really do. Pumpkin pies aren't a thing over here. I'm not sure I've only really ever had one. But look, as if by magic, it's all gone brown. Excellent. And now we're on to more exciting stuff. I'm dry brushing. So I dry brushed with 3 or 4 colours, and I added in more of buff titanium, it's sometimes called. It's sometimes called natural, just a different colour acrylic paint. And I used it to bring out mid-tones in it, if this is the dark colour, and to then bring out more highlights on the vines, etc. Now, when I find, I'm maybe weird, I don't like too much dry brushing. This is a painting technique, I'm painting with it. But some people get really excessive with white dry brushing and it goes everywhere. And I look at it, and I described it to someone the other day, it looks like a seagull's had diarrhea if it's bright white. So I try never to use bright white for my dry brushing, because in reality, nothing's really that highlighted that bright. So there's ways around that. One is to actually thin your paint slightly and then dry brush it, so you're not putting as much weight of paint on. But the other is just to lighten the colour you already have until you reach that level. And acrylics do dry slightly darker anyway, so it looks quite drastic. And then you build it up carefully, because nothing's white rimmed. But think about only capturing the surfaces if you're doing that. Now for this, I put a lot on because I wanted to lighten it from the dark brown to a much lighter brown overall, because that's the tone on the vines. So we've got a stunning mid-colour close-up here. And it's quite sloppy, as you can see, because I thinned it so it wouldn't over-colour. Dry brushing though is, if it gets too much, put a wash over it and it will tone back down again. And I've been using oil washes recently. I've just done a rock face. If you follow me on Instagram or Facebook, you'll have seen it on there. Or if you're on my Discord because you're a YouTube channel member or a Patreon member, then you can see it on there because I post on there as well. And I used oil washes recently, and you thin them very thinly with white spirit and they go a long way for not a lot of paint. And the white spirit's really cheap. So great way of doing things. So yeah, dry brushing. We've now got a great dry brushing montage, or kind of semi-wet montage. So back to the chat. Don't understand why people push the dislike button if they don't like something. Why are they even watching? I don't know. I think people come sometimes off the thumbnail and click, and then it isn't what they wanted. Some people say they do it to warn other people off bad videos, but you know, some people are just cranky. Bless them. I actually feel sorry for cranky people now. Having had some of the comments I've had, and I don't get many, so don't get me wrong, I'm not moaning about it. But I just look at people and just think, you must be in a really bad place if you're writing that to a complete stranger. You know, I actually feel sorry for you that you think that's appropriate behaviour. So that's where I am now. David Felkin, I love the cinematography. I model 1 to 35 tanks, but love railway photography. I really wish my photography was better. I don't feel it's good. For the videoing, there's loads of light on this, and even then it's quite hard sometimes on some edges to catch enough light to actually model it. The front edge of the swamp is just slightly outside of my cone of light. But I don't think my photography is as good as it should be for what I do. So it's something I'd like to improve on. But yeah, I think it's a learning curve, isn't it? You have to improve on so much to do well at a hobby that's turned into a job. You may not have needed to do it much in the past, but if you don't have good photos or a style that people recognise, then you'll often just fail because people won't recognise your decent modelling. So I really like Chris Nevard does a certain tone to all of his photos, and I recognise them when they come off my Instagram feed, and I really love that look on his photos, but I instantly know it's him because of that colouring that he uses. It's slightly desaturated and it's quite bright, and I really love them, just that style. So probably need to improve mine. We definitely need to improve mine. Tamsin P, the Mongoose Diorama was cool. That was fun. So yeah, that's it for Halo for now. But I have a Banished Ghost. I couldn't bring myself to pay the 90 odd quid for the Mantis, and a Brute and a sort of Master Chief to do something else with. So someone asked, was I going to do Earth Wind, because I've done Fire and Water. It's like, the Earth may literally be the Banished being smashed into it, but the air could be the Banished Ghost because it's in mid-air. So I might do them. We'll see, but not in a rush. I'm playing Halo this week. It comes out on Wednesday for those of you who aren't into Halo. So I've booked 3 days. I mean, I'm self-employed, so I've basically put out my project planner to Halo, 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 and then I'm going away at the weekend. I said to my friend, "You're very lucky. I just wanted to play Halo." But I didn't feel I could say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not coming to visit you for the weekend because of Halo." She said, "No, you blew well couldn't." So yeah, so the whole family's going down. It's going to be good. Digger said that water splash worked well, really well. The end look is fantastic. Thanks. It's the first time I'd done it, and I wasn't sure how the spray was coming out. That was what really worried me. And it's a large scale, so it makes it. Is it easier in a large scale? Probably. My top tip for any water splash or white water now would be Woodland Scenics foam. And I got Woodland Scenics snow. And I got that from Real Terrain Hobbies. He mixed it in resin, which was really hard work, to be honest. But it creates a beautiful froth. And I think the final thing that made it sell was a massive coat of clear lacquer on top that just made it slightly shiny as well. So it worked well. Polyfibre occasionally annoys me in the photos, but I think as a whole it came together well. So quite pleased. Yeah, thanks Norm, saying the same thing. The Halo Mongoose water splash, great build, great video. Thank you. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing it. And it didn't take that long actually. Partly because the mongoose was already done. Unlike the warthog where I had to build the whole everything, that was quite a simple one. I mean, I can do resin rivers very quickly because I've done so many of them now, and they're actually very simple to do. It doesn't take long, it's a matter of days to get them done. As long as you dam well and don't leak, it's fine. Yeah, timber. People push the dislike button. I'm just checking actually I'm still dry brushing. Oh, it's gone really bright white at the moment. It's not white, it's natural. Buff titanium. So, sorry. Timber. People push the dislike button if they don't like the music or if the way the vid is made or disagree about a point. It's not a negative as YT count it as interaction. Yeah, but they've hidden it, so you can't really see it now anyway. Yeah, here comes the detail. So Lee from Anfield Road says, got you on and working on kit for my layout. That's good. It's good to work at the same time. I often put live streams on while I'm working. I just, depends what I'm doing. If I'm doing big things and I'm painting, then you'll find my phone and iPads are covered in paint now. Scrape it off. Timber Surf just means they're too lazy to comment or too scared. No, some do comment and some of them are rude. I delete obscene ones or swearing, but I tend to leave the rude ones up because otherwise it just looks, I don't know, you've got to take the lumps, haven't you? John, hey from Preston. Sure, this will be yet another stunning diorama when completed. Keep up the videos, love them. Well, thanks, John. I'm hoping this looks good. It's actually a lot taller than it needs to be when you see the that sort of shape. 16 by 9, but it's slightly probably squashed even on that. So it's going to be quite wide. I'm still thinking about the lighting because I'm going to put a backdrop on and it's slightly blue lit from behind. So I'm trying to work out whether I should drill a hole in the backdrop just to put a light in so it lights from the back, because there is quite a visual light there in the movie scene, but we'll see. Still debating that. And I'm going to do a video on fog at some point. I've got 3 different fog techniques to try. So they'll be going on their own video. Now at this point, I didn't like the white being quite so white. So I went over it with a really dilute ochre, it's yellow ochre and brown. And then to tone it all down, I sprayed it all with a black acrylic wash. The recipe's on my website. If you look at the starting scenery section, it's under washes. And it's an acrylic wash, so it goes over very simply. It sprays out the spray bottle, very, very simple. Black. I'm not a great fan of black washes. For the rock face I was talking about, I use Starship Filth oil colour, which is off black. I mean, it's not much off black, but this is quite dilute. And you can see by the bottom I actually put quite a lot on. And there's a lot of knobbles and it was too bright. It's been on the floor and you can just see it. Can you see it? No, it's kind of here. It looks quite dark now. And the trouble is, when you put it in a well-lit environment, it looks very different to if you put it on the floor or on that stool over there. It just looks far too dark. It doesn't even show. I was just like, I'm just going to leave it in the background. But it doesn't show this week because it is looking really dark. And that's fine. I've got a bright white X-Wing and other stuff to come in. So it will be lit well, which is why I'm saying I might put a light behind. Because it is quite a dark and dingy scene when you look at the actual scene. That's the trouble. So, Matt Smith. I love the Mongo scene. Thank you, Matt. And Silver Scratch Build, you do some amazing work. I love the Warthog explosion. Thank you. That did really badly on YouTube. It was like 9 out of 10 and nobody liked it. And I was like, come on, it's Halo. What I wasn't expecting when I thought I'd do 2 before Halo comes out was multiplayer to come out. So anybody who's remotely interested in Halo is busy playing multiplayer at the moment. So they're not watching YouTube. There we go. Yeah, seagull diarrhea. Greys are best. I agree, David. Greys or beiges sometimes if you're doing a warmer toned. I use grey quite a lot over brown on my rock faces just for slightly different colours and textures. So yeah. And yeah, Digger reminding you all to do the thumbs up. I like the idea of having multiple channels to give second thumbs up, but guys, that's quite excessive, but thank you. So Norm said, wow, weird autocorrect. The detailing is really starting to pop now. Yeah, it does make a difference, dry brushing. So now I'm using some green washes. These sort of work. They're water mixable oils. I think they're kidding when they say they're water mixable, because the dark green one, which is Winsor & Newton, really doesn't mix in water at all. It doesn't mix particularly well in White Spirit, but it will eventually go in. But the pale green one, that bright green that's literally going on now, that's a different brand. It's a cheap one off Amazon, and that mixes straight in. So I don't know whether the Winsor & Newton water mixable aren't quite. But what I like about it is it doesn't go in. It leaves quite little bits. As it goes into, it makes a sort of murky green water, but it never gets particularly dissolved. And so it creates little bits in there which look like bits of detritus of green. So it's an interesting texture when it goes on. But the green is going on because it's a swamp and it isn't looking quite green enough at the moment. So it will, just tones it down a bit, and I've put that green everywhere. If you look at the pictures, there's quite a lot of green on the vines, and I'm trying to decide whether at the end I might come back and just paint a little bit more green on some of the vines. But I'm going to wait till everything's in, and I might do it. I might do it. This didn't quite come out enough because it was so thin, and it's great. It actually, you can see it, it's a great colourway. If I look at it now, it's not particularly obvious on the vines though. And I put loads of thin ones at the bottom, which you'll see in a minute. They're very freaky. They are really freaky, and they're coming soon. But they are just, I don't know, there's something about the green yet that needs to be investigated, I think. More pictures staring. I spend a lot of time coming in here and looking at the pictures, then going back out and modelling, and then come back in here and looking at the pictures. And if I use a thin colour, it's not going to over colour it. So if it's not quite right, it's easier to rescue. What are your plans? So Jaw21 asked, what are my plans with the articulated dragons? Now, if you are on Facebook or Instagram, you'll have seen my articulated dragons that I printed. They're by Dagobah, and they're print in place on a filament printer. You can do them on resin, people have, but you just have to make sure you rinse them well, and obviously they'll be a bit smaller. They're about this big when I've done them. I printed them about 105% on my Prusa Mark 3S. I hate the thing, it prints awfully, but actually I've now replaced the hot end, and the first one has a layer shift, so I've printed 3, and one's missing the top of his horns and has got a layer shift. The other 2 printed perfectly. I don't know, I was wondering about doing a couple of a water dragon and a fire dragon or something, and having them in either resin fire or resin water twisted around. I don't know, I just printed them because I like them more than anything else, and I was trying to get, I'm printing at the moment a Titanfall pilot helmet. I've been wanting to print this Titanfall pilot helmet for about 3 or 4 years. It's a video game. It's probably not going to go on a video ever, so you'll see it on Instagram and Facebook if you follow me there, but you won't really see it other than that, I don't think, because this I'm not going to start doing cosplay particularly. But I've been wanting to print this full-size Titanfall helmet since I played Titanfall 2 4 years ago or 3 years ago, and I loved Titanfall 2. It's my favourite game. You are a novice pilot, and the big mech BT is your kind of, you take him over, and I absolutely adored it. It's a brilliant campaign. It has great use. There's one level called Effecting Cause where you jump through time, and you have to jump between items that are in the different times because it's being destroyed in the future. So you have to blip on your time wristband between the different times whilst you jump. Oh, it's a really brilliant concept. It's a great story, and I really enjoyed that Titanfall world. I've got the book art of Titanfall 2 and Art of Titanfall 1, and I love the concept art. It's probably one of my favourite video games in every single way, from the combat through to the story. It's about 8 hours to play the campaign as well, so it's not big, so I've played it a couple of times. And on to, I'm missing out talking about soil. Oh, how exciting. So anyway, I'm printing that. So this was a test, really, the dragon, to see if that would print. So I mustn't miss talking about what's actually happening on this video. I put down white glue, talked about that earlier, and because this is quite slopey and I want the soil to stick to it. And this is, if you're at the beginning of the stream, this is my mum's garden topsoil she got delivered. She got a massive big bag of it, and I took a small bag out of it. And I was really lazy, I didn't sieve it, because I wanted small rocks at the bottom and fine soil at the top, and it naturally grays by the small little rocks roll off. And if you look, there's some rounded pebbles around the swamp edge in the movie. So these rolling down and being slightly rounded are just perfect by chance. And it's got the odd little bit of twig in as well. So they kind of stayed. There's some chunks of brick in there, so that came out. But I used it around the bottom of everywhere. It's hard to tell what is tree and trunk and what is actually soil, especially on the nearest tree to us. And eventually I put some soil on and thought, well, the detritus and the leaf litter will have built up there anyway, and the tree may have grown over it. It was useful for covering any bits of foil that were still showing through at the bottom of the ones on the right hand side, because they're hard to get to around the bottom, because I'd had to glue them on the foil because they were falling over. So white glue, then soil. It's not sieved, it's just scooped out of a box and put on. It's that simple. And you know, I put it everywhere. In a minute I'm going to clean the water off. That's a really key point. So that was my articulated jaw 21, asked about my articulated dragon, and I went into Titanfall helmets because I was actually just doing it as a test print really to print something on my presser since I've upgraded the hot end to see whether it printed well, and it printed a lot better. So the first piece of my Titanfall helmet, which is really exciting. I've been putting off printing it because there isn't a very good one. The Etsy one isn't very good, and the Thingiverse one wasn't very good, and somebody's been working on one and he published it. So I wrote and thanked him, and he's got a few more pieces to go on, but it's more or less done on this version. I was just so excited to have one that actually is almost screen accurate, so that's perfect. David, very true. I use a vignette to finish my photos, Kathy. I've put a white one on when I've got a white background, and I sometimes put a dark one on, especially on my phone, because it's almost automatically Instagram will put one on if you do a high pro 2 or whatever it is as a filter. And so I will often put one on, but I guess, yeah, I need to. Don't get me wrong, I've spent a lot of time studying photography. I just don't feel I'm very good at it. Probably my eye. Stephen said, on the first Halo diorama, used a kind of polyfibre as a dust trail. We think of using it with model jet fighters to represent chemtrails and hide support wire. It's a good idea. It's the same one I used for the water splash. So if you've seen that one, it's exactly the same one. It's just high quality polyfibre quilt filling or whatever, and it came in a bag this big. I was like, that's going to do a lot of dioramas. Probably can buy it smaller. Just to warn you, 1 kilogram is big in volume because it's so lightweight. So it's just normal quilting, bed, whatever, polyfibres, nothing special about it. I used cotton wool on the explosion, and I've struggled with cotton wool as a texture. I don't like it, it's a bit dense. I do find polyfibre better for things like water splashes and dust. I also used it as a small dust one on my Saw and Hulk one. So I've started to use it quite a bit because I've got it. I think that's the thing, if you buy a product, you often just use it because you've got it. You think, I can just do that, I'll take 2 minutes. So yeah. So Giant Ball Monster says, I like to paint my model trees with alternating washes and patting dry the high points to avoid having to do a lot of dry brushing. That's a really nice technique. Taking it off the high points. Yeah, that's a really nice technique. I like that idea. I saw someone, and it was something like Monster Party Wars probably, and he was using acrylic paint diluted as a wash over a bespoke, scratch-built model Star Wars that he's made. And he was then using a cotton bud to mottle it to get a nice texture on it, and it looked really effective. So yeah, taking washes off can be a really good way of doing things as well as putting them on. Sometimes it's about what you take off, isn't it? How would acrylic thinners work? I don't know. I suspect they will flow better with acrylic thinners than water. If you over thin paint, it doesn't stick. It breaks up. And I had that problem a lot on the backdrop because I wanted a really fine effect, and the acrylics were just breaking up. They weren't flowing nicely. So it is possible to over thin. I put some matte medium in and it didn't really help, to be honest. So I went to oils, which thin beautifully to a very fine mist effect, which is what I was after. I'm the Eric Clapton according to Rigurin one. Eric Clapton of dioramas. Thank you. Norm, having extra dragons laying around is a good thing, lol. Well, my mum's nicked them all. There's 3 on her mantelpiece at the moment. One's missing the top of his horns and has a layer shift, but she's got 3 of them staring at me now. They'll come back and get used at some point, but they are there. Being a printer, I know the Pantone colour palette. Do you reference that at times? David Falcon asked me that. Not really. I have a set of 4 or 5 colours that I use, which are raw umber, burnt sienna, burnt umber, raw, yellow ochre, and natural. And favourite one, warm grey. I don't really use the other greys that much, but there are other greys. I really like warm grey. And I use Payne's grey to dark rather than that. So I tend to do it by that. I don't do it by the Pantone numbers because I buy them. That's how I buy them, the paints, in almost everything, because I buy artist paints for most of this. When I'm doing models, obviously, they have really great names like Field Brown, which is not as helpful. Though I've noticed that some of the brands are now starting to do raw umber and burnt sienna as well, because because they've probably already got it. They've just called it JGS, GG Brown or something instead. But I haven't used them really. But they are great if you want to go into and have a mixed set of emulsion latex paint like I did with this green. I'd taken a photo in, but it didn't quite, I think they must have, it was slightly mottled, the picture. And I'm guessing they picked the wrong bit of it. Well, they just put it under the machine, but it wasn't the bit I necessarily liked as the overall effect. So it's something to watch when you're printing stuff to take in. But having an actual Pantone number would be probably better. And you can get it off Photoshop, I presume. Nice soil. It was nice soil. Very sandy. It looked really good. It's great for first of all. Looks quite red though in some lights. It looks red on this at the moment. I think it's got quite a lot of pounded up brick in it, or sand or something that's quite red. But it looks good because the actual colour tone of the sort of the movie set has a lot of brownish leaves on top, so it kind of fits in with those. John Crooks asked, what's my preference for 3D printing, filament or resin for the best results? Resin. I hate filament printers for results. The layer lines do my head in. On the dragons, they've come out okay, but I can see the layer lines, and I'll probably spray their head with spray putty or something and not worry too much about the scales. But I'm not a fan of those layer lines because I'm trying to do close-up photos for dioramas, and all I see is the layer lines. All I see is the layer lines. I see them on my resin printers as well sometimes, so it's just slightly finer. And for what I want, resin just can't do the detail. You're trying to extrude hot gunk out, and it's not going to extrude my hanging Tomb Raider for the jungle waterfall that I'm doing, where her fingers are less than a mil square. No, I can't get that detail out of my filament. So I am resin all the way. But I wanted my helmet to be in filament for price. It is much cheaper. And there are certain components I often print in filament, so my 3D printed points went in. I actually cast them later, but the original ones were 3D printed in filament. So I do filament a bit, but my presser, I've had it nearly a year now. I got it on Black Friday and it arrived in December. It printed like a dog for most of that time. It's been horrendous. The new hot end eventually sorted it, but I was just, yeah, I've not been in a happy place. And actually the layer shift on the first dragon was because I'd redone all the cabling, obviously, when I put the new hot end in, and one of the you cable tie it on, and one of the cable ties had come around, so it had a Y crash detect, presumably from warping. I put the enclosure around it for the second one. It's been better because I have an enclosure around it to stop drafts, and it just keeps that little area a little bit warmer. There's no lid on it, it's just 4 walls. Keeps the drafts out. It's in a fairly cold part of the house because it's an old garage. The boiler's in there, so it never gets freezing, but it's often 18 overnight or something. But with just the 4 acrylic sheet walls around the outside, they're not even insulated, it will stay at 20-21 through the night, and it keeps it more even. But that cable tie had twisted round, so when it had the crash and had obviously curled or warped slightly, it had gone to its X stop to come back out to the right place and restart, but the cable tie had stopped it going home, so it shifted a little bit. There we go. That was exciting. But I fixed it. I went down the Prusa manual on what to do if you have a big layer shift. And it's only the one, nothing else had layer shifted. And this was one of the things that said, check the cabling isn't fouling. It's like, ding, ding, oh look. So Prusa do have a lot of instructions that are very helpful if things go wrong. But I thought it'd be like, someone said, it's like the Apple Mac, it just works. Well, I've got to say, I've rebuilt all my Apple Macs from the scratch because Finder stopped working. So Apple Macs don't just work, and nor do Prusas. For me, I want it to be a tool, and I don't want it to be a hobby of itself. And that's where it becomes a problem, because as a tool, it isn't always reliable. And I don't want to have to put the hours in learning it that it needs. So that's just me. So yeah, definitely resin. But you can't print, I mean, my resin printer's as big as my Prusa built plate, one of them, but it's very expensive. Cushion inserts are a cheap source of polyfibre. Ah, yeah, definitely. Tamsin P says that. And my mum said to me, oh, I've got loads of polyfibre, why don't you just come to me? Okay, next time I'll come to you. I used to have loads of quilting wadding. I did a whole set of trees with them, polyfibre trees on the back of my layout with them. The trouble is it's white. I couldn't find the black much in the UK, but you can actually get black polyfibre. Certainly better when I had a black quilt and someone said you should have used black polyfiber because the white comes through the black cotton material. And yeah, they'd be better. I'm just going to distract onto the video for a second. So every single thing I glue in scenery practically uses the same technique. I spray with isopropyl alcohol and water, and that's what's in here. It's about a third, 99% isopropyl alcohol. I also use it for cleaning my resin prints, not this bottle. I use the neat stuff for cleaning my resin prints. And I put it through this fine spray bottle, just one off Amazon. They change every time I go. So I like the trigger action. I find it less tiring than the pump action this way. And I soak it, especially when there's quite a thick layer on in some areas of this soil. And the soaking breaks down the surface tension. You know, you all did it at school, put a drop of fairy liquid in and whatever that's floating will sink, and you know, the meniscus at the edge and all that bit about surface tension. Your glue won't sink in as easily, and something like tar grout I recommend a lot. It won't sink in without this into tar grout on its own, and I recommend adding about a third sand to get it through the tar grout because it's too fine a powder. It just won't sink into it, balls on the surface. And once I've done that isopropyl alcohol wet water mix, you can use fairy liquid, but I find it bubbles annoyingly. I'm spraying with, this is matte Mod Podge because I don't want it to re-wet later, and it's diluted. Now, most people would say do a third. I can't get it through this spray bottle. I can't get a third through there. So it's a 6 matte Mod Podge and 5/6 water. And that's why I soak it a lot, because there's not that much glue. It sticks, it's fine, especially if you're using it with tar grout, because that's got its own cement. But I use this with all my scenery products. I actually used Knock landscape glue on the mongoose because that dries glossy. This dries matte. So you do have to watch some of the commercial ones, what finish they have when they dry. Quite a lot of them dry shiny. Some of the specialist grass glues especially dry shiny, which isn't great if you've got a sparse bit of grass. But what I'm doing on this is just soaking it. But I don't feel that's enough glue. I'm a belt and braces girl. It's quite dilute and it doesn't look that well glued to me. So I use the same mixture. I also have about half glue, half water in a very different type of dropper bottle. One of those swizzle top dropper bottles that I've recently bought for putting paints in. And I use that sometimes over rocks. So my jungle waterfall, there's rocks around the bottom. Every single rock got a drop of that over it to make sure it was well stuck. And they still came off because the plaster underneath actually came off, which was odd. Probably still slightly damp. But on this, I've used more of the thinner 1/6, 5/6. I mix a big milk carton of it up at a time, so it's done. And I use that in a dropper bottle in a minute. And I'm talking because I keep expecting myself to appear with the dropper bottle, but I'm not. But anyway, I make sure that I soak it so that it's well stuck. I'm going back to the chat whilst you can wait for that to appear. Tim Stringer, paint colour names are funny. With a lot of model acrylics, it's either grey-brown or Eritrean Army Jacket, June to November 1947. Not very helpful. True, I have noticed that some of them are starting to bring out the traditional raw umbers as well. And obviously they're slightly finer than the artist's acrylics. So if you're painting figures, you want to use those types of paints rather than artist's acrylics, which are a bit thicker and not quite as dense on pigment sometimes. Treacolita, at this point in the diorama, are you working off reference photos or entirely from feel and memory? Oh, if there was a gap there, sometimes you've seen there's a gap and you're wondering what she's doing. I've often run into the other room just to have a look. I do run in because I had the big picture up on my computer. Sometimes I'll have it on the phone. Sometimes you'll see me in a video saying, look, I had this up on the phone, especially if I'm trying to match a colour. So I'm about to paint, well, I've just painted a rock face and I'm about to put in sand, except I'm on 5 telecons over the next 2 days. But once those are done, I'm going to put in some sand at the bottom, which will be a mix of sand and beige tile grout, just to make it a bit finer. I've come with the dropper bottle at last. But I'm going to put that in on that one. And I will have the colour with me as I mix the resin, because the first layer is going to be a really bright blue resin to get the depth that's there in the colour. But I don't want it to be that bright blue all the way through. So I will often have it then with the phone in hand and cross-reference, but it's so small on my phone for the bigger one. And the Star Wars ones, I scroll through and look quite a bit when I'm having breakfast before I start the day. I'll sit there and look at the photos. So it's a bit of look and feel by the end. I'm not slavish to the, I have to have this vine here because there's one there. But the trees were definitely planned out as per the scene as best I could to try and match the photo when I take the final one. So yeah. Juju, hello, I love your job on videos. Thank you. Do I use water with Vallejo? Do you mean Vallejo water effects? I've got, no, I'm not sure I've used the Vallejo one. I'm not sure I've even got it. I've used AK Interactive, and I on my Mongoose one I used this splash gel that Green Stuff World sent me, and some of them dry quicker than others clear. Especially the artist acrylic ones you can buy in art stores. They can sometimes be quite a while before they go clear, if they go clear at all. I've got a couple that have never gone clear. Thankfully it's normally white water places, so it's not so bad. But the splash gel I had from them went clear really quickly. I did test the night before to see. But I try not to use those kind of gels particularly thickly, because I feel if you're wanting that big a wave, you should be finding a different way of doing it. Incidentally, I was watching Miniature Wonderland pour their water for their Rio scene that's just come in, and the guys who did that are really gifted modellers. They're in South America, and they stamped their resin as it was setting. Fascinating. So Green Stuff World sent me these. Yep, I probably should take a product placement something on this video somewhere. And this is what I get from the gutter. So they sent me these. I'm not going to use them on this because it's the wrong shape leaf. But they call it leaf litter, and you can get this from a silver birch tree. It's not the seeds, it's the bits in the catkin, the spacers. These are their micro leaves in brown and white. I thought white because then I could paint them to the sludgy beige I wanted, but actually I thought, well, not very big tubs. I hardly used any of this doing the leaf litter. So sometimes scenery can be quite expensive because you'll buy a pot and you'll think, oh, it's really expensive. And then you don't use that much. So you know, I don't actually know how much a pot of micro leaves brown is, but you don't use that much because you're sprinkling it on. If you wanted to make a whole tree with it, yes, you'd soon go through the pots. But when you were adding it as leaf litter at the bottom, I was surprised at how little was left. And here's some more. Chamomile tea leaves we talked about. Tea leaves, normal ones, I do use sometimes. I only use chamomile tea on this. But the other thing you use is dead leaves. So at this time of year, it's brilliant, loads of dead leaves coming off. Whiz them up in a kitchen blender. I have a dedicated kitchen blender. I don't have to ask another half then to use it like most people do. I wouldn't do them in your normal kitchen blender, perhaps. Well, I put paint through mine, so I certainly wouldn't use it because it's green inside now. But these are a bit big, they need sieving down. This is what's left. But you get this is whizzed up. It needs whizzing a bit more. But you get like broken up bits of leaves, which are perfect if you're doing a forest or edges of roads. Those unsightly gaps around the edges of your buildings, you know, a few chamomile tea leaves in there can hide it. Nothing screams model building like it levitating in midair with a black line at the bottom, because real houses just can't do that. So, you know, chamomile tea leaves, very helpful. So at this point, it's not quite dry. I think I might have hair dried it a bit just to set the top so I could titivate these if I needed to with a brush. I just sprinkle them on with my fingers. It's nothing too exciting. I just want to build up the look of leaf litter. So, Lee from Avonfield Road says it looks good, thank you. Stephen Cameron, getting my COVID booster next week. The first one made me feel rough, second one made me feel hyper. Can't wait to see what number 3 does. I have to wait till the 12th before I'm at my 6 months. So I'm going to go to the walk-in clinic because there are no appointments around me, but you can get to the walk-in clinic. And my sister waited 40 minutes last week, so I'm going to go on the 12th. Oh, the 13th probably, which is the Monday, to get mine. Birch seeds. Giant boar monster asks. Yeah, I said silver birch, but any birch tree. But round here, there's loads of ornamental silver birches planted in the parks and roads. I've actually got one in my garden, and I used to have one outside the front of my house in my old house. Very, very easy to go down the gutters of the roads next to them and pick them up. I've been to restaurants, come out and gone, ooh, look at all those there, and used a napkin from the restaurant. See, I think I saw them on the way in and took a napkin with me, and I've been there in the centre of Knowles scooping up leaves at the gutter. I mean, miniature leaves to go in. You will get comments though if you use them. People are like, oh, they're not, they're very distinctive. So they're fine for maple trees and in larger scales. The other thing you could do is whiz them in your kitchen blender to get a slightly finer look as well, if you wanted. But they are brilliant and they're free, especially if you've got a birch tree nearby. Lee, good stream. Keep up the good vids and streams. Thank you. I've got to say, I probably need to drink more. Talking for 2 hours, someone said to me, I don't know how you do it. I'm like, normally people say they can't shut me up. So there we go. It's a skill, obviously, being able to talk a lot. Hobby blender, says Tim. Yeah, mine was a cheap kitchen blender, but some people use coffee grinders. I think they're a bit smaller. I don't know if there's much difference, but something cheap and dedicated is safer because, you know, I pulled these out the gutter on a road. Okay. I have actually got a big bag somewhere, which I need to find again. It's in one of these little pots where I went through and I whizzed up loads of dead leaves. And it creates, again, everything from almost like a flour powder, which is brilliant, all the way through to big fibrous bits if you put twigs in by mistake. Now, these are the white going on, the white micro leaves, and I went, bleh. So I evened it out and then stopped. But I'll put a brown wash on in a sec to tone it down. You need variety of colour sometimes just to lift it. The brown is actually really like the photo though, and I probably should just have stuck with that. With hindsight, I would have stuck with that. But I just thought, oh, I've got these other ones, I'll try them. Just because you have it doesn't mean you need to use it. So this is chamomile tea leaves going on to act as kind of a mid-ground between the white and the brown. Yeah, I might go back and add more brown yet. We'll see. I think it's all right for volume at the moment. But I want to put the people in and just see how it looks when I take a photo at that point, because the people are just going to be stood there. R2's going to have a hole drilled, so I'll have to go back and add a little bit. I don't even know how I'm going to get that light out from there. I probably should have done something from the beginning because it's now really hard to get to. What I normally do if I'm going to run wiring underneath is put a couple of feet on, but I think this foam isn't that solid. You know, it might warp over time if I do that. So I would then tip it on its side and cut a channel out. Oh, clever, Kathy. Should have done that really before. So I'm not sure whether I like R2 or not. I'd like to. I bought some more LEDs which are red and blue flashing. I need to check them to see how fast they flash. So we'll see. Getting the lighting in is hard. The other thing, of course, is I could run it along the surface because I'm going to cover it with vines, and there's actually a hole to the right that is very easy to get it out of. Probably. So anyway, moral of this story, think about your lighting. I thought about it. Think about your wiring for your lighting. I could just put a couple of batteries in him. And if he's big enough, I'm not sure he is, I might just get one battery in there, which will give the 1.5 volts that I need, or something probably to get the LED lit for this. And then I can pull the battery out to turn it off. Time will tell. He's printed, so I'll just have to see. I don't think I've got the space for a battery is the problem. I think I've only got the space to get an LED in there, a 3mm LED. I'm thinking mixed nuts at the moment. It just has that kind of coconut Bombay mix sort of look, doesn't it? Desiccated coconut. So, what have we got here? Where did I get to? Hobby blender, right. Timber surf. Now is the time to collect autumn leaves, dry it for a few weeks and blend them. Yeah, definitely. I've got some oak leaves from last year actually, ready to blend should I need them, but I haven't yet. Yeah, and timber also makes the point that different trees give different colours. You get a beautiful colour from beech. It keeps the leaves all winter, so you haven't lost it. It drops them in spring. Beautiful colour. It's very much like the reddy colour here. It's just beautiful. Yeah, that's why people have beech trees, because they stay full of leaves, dead admittedly, all winter. Cleaning off your water, very important. And nice Christmas sweater jumper. Thanks, Daniel. Thought I should go that way. So Timber says, keep a shopping bag in your pocket in case you see some leaves. At certain times of the year, I walk around with plastic bags in my pockets for ages, just looking in the gutter. It's very sad. Yeah, I'm not embarrassed at all, gutter diving. David Falcon, the layers add so much to the overall effect. Scenery is always about layers. If you just do one colour or one layer, it will never look as good as if you do 2 or 3. Because in nature, it piles up different things. it is important to get those different colours and tones and layers and mottling to be realistic. Obviously man-made areas can be slightly different, but I'm talking about natural scenes. But even in man-made areas, it's never just one leaf generally. It might be a mix. There's a bit of brown dirt under the leaves. There's a lot you can do to add layers in. Debbie's looking great, thanks Norm. Polite 3000, if you allow me a little kind of anecdote, I always liked the idea of building dioramas since I started to collect model cars in HO. Though I've never been able to build a good one. You know, sometimes you just need to build one. You know, my first dioramas weren't that great in some areas. You know, I look at them and think, could have done that better. Some of my later ones aren't that great, but just build them. You'll learn something from everyone, and pretty soon they'll be brilliant. But I really got flashed when I read a magazine article years ago about how they built and used the spaceship models and model assets for the movie Moon 44. I don't know Moon 44. They'd use quite simple stuff and ways to film. It's absolutely effective. Sometimes you should look at the toy photography people. They just literally put everything out of focus almost, and they just sprinkle down a bit of dirt, throw in some flour for snow, and they make it look like you're on Hoth or you're on Endor, and they hardly use anything. And it's all about the photography. There's a guy who makes amazing scenes, like photography dioramas, but it's just icing, sort of sugar or something he's sprinkling on. Oh, must go back to the video. This is glued with exactly the same mix as the soil. It's the isopropyl alcohol and water first, just to settle everything down as well. It's a much finer spray because it's just like water, so it comes out better, settles everything down and puts it in place, so it won't come off if your glue's a little bit solid and more likely to move it. So yeah, the same exact thing. Oh, Stephen says having to dismantle the layout soon, soul destroying. Yeah, I think if you know you're going to dismantle them and you build them to be taken apart, it's fine, but I never do that, and it's so hard to move them because they're put into specific spaces, aren't they? It's really hard, all that love. That's why I often build my expensive building kits on diorama bases, so I can pop them out and put them in, but you know, there's the brown wash going on just to darken everything down a bit because it was looking a bit light. It doesn't do much, and I don't really like this brown wash later on in the video. It wasn't very nice to me. So John says, I love the way the different leaf material colours are coming through over the soil. Thanks, John. That was the aim, and I think it came out. I might put a little bit more brown on yet. I don't know. We'll see. It looks different when it's dry. I think it looks fine if I look at it now. I'm just, you know, debating. Yes, this is looking a lot like a dessert. Yeah, no, I look at, it's my raw umber paint and matte Mod Podge mix that I use to seal stuff, and it looks like chocolate sauce. Oh, we're now onto the freaky vines. So I'd always planned that I'd put some finer jute string in at the end, and it would use the jute string colour mostly for the vines, because they're actually not far off this colour in reality. But I didn't use hot glue like I did for the other ones, because, well, hot glue is quite solid and I'd have to paint everything. So I thought I'll just use white glue. It'll be fine. It wasn't. It really wasn't. You don't get much of a video of this, but trust me when I say, for days they came off. So what happened was I put this on, and then I thought, well, I'll paint it, and the glue was dry on some of them, maybe not as dry as it could be on the others. But when I start to paint them in a minute, I used the water mixable oils, very dilute, so it was a dark green, quite dilute, and I started to dab the top, and this kind of splodgy dark green oil paint was on the brush, so it came out in splodges, which tied them in, you know, so they didn't look out of keeping with the tree. And then the thinner green, sort of very watery mix ran down the vines. It did two things. Firstly, it loosened the white glue, so half of them fell off, so I had to glue them all and put them back on again. Secondly, they started to move. Wait and see it. It's very bizarre. So Anfield said looks good, thank you, Lee. Stephen Cameron, yeah, Mary wants to live near the sea, and do I. Well, I live about as far from the sea as you can get in the UK. I'm in the centre of the country, so I appreciate it. There's something very, very appealing about the sea, but it is slightly warmer here, so at least I have that plus point. Magnus Persson, for the Halo Warthog exploding diorama, sterling job by the way, thank you very much. You mentioned the rock castings from WS rock molds didn't look quite right. Having the same issue on a 1 to 20 Australian mining scene, it's hard. It's really hard in the larger scales. I carved the rock face that's currently on Instagram, and it will be on a video sometime maybe before Christmas or maybe just after Christmas, depending how, because I'm doing Halo next week and not working. And I tried carving for the first time. I did a mix of sculpting it while it was wet. I used polyfiller. If you're in the UK, polyfiller, I don't know what it's like. It's just a fine white patching interior plaster. And I had tons of old boxes of it that were going off, one of which was nearly solid. So I used that, it's quite fine. I sculpted it as I put it on, and then I scraped it. And you can do it while it's semi-set, but I did it over 2 days. And because I did it over 2 days, most of it had dried. So I ended up then scratching it, and sometimes it broke away totally off the thin layer to the sculpt mould that I got underneath, or even on some areas I built up quite a lot of this polyfiller and the bit underneath was still wet and it pulled away to that. And it looked different. I'm happier with that carved plaster than I would have been with woodland scenic rock moulds. One thing you can do is combine the two techniques, I guess, and use that for slabs within a larger scene. But I think I need to improve my rock sculpting. The other thing you can do is to sculpt a real rock, but I've never found one that looked right in scale. I was trying to do a large scale, 1 to 20-ish, slate quarry, but slate, so I cast some rocks in preparation and slate just didn't look right in scale. It's very worrying. So it's hard. Sculpting and carving, a mix of the two, I think is actually the answer, but it's just hard in that scale. Jewel21, do I ever hide any Easter eggs in any of your dioramas? Just seeing the opening in the roots. I personally would hide something in Grogu. I haven't, but that doesn't mean I won't. Yeah, Grogu might have known him back then anyway. So Magnus then said any recommendations, ideas. You mean for rocks? Other people manage to make things look good by scrumpling up foil. I have never I've tried it and it just looked like scrumpled foil to me. Other people must scrumple their foil better than me because mine just looked awful. It looked like scrumpled foil. So that's another way people get big rock moulds. But no, I guess there is a bit about carving is probably the best way to go. Stephen Cameron, no pain, no gain. Well, sometimes it'd be nice. Yay, the freaky vines are coming. Right, Digger, get ready for the haunted forest. I'm still sticking them on by the look of it. The trouble with videoing it is sometimes you video one bit longer than you need to. Get ready for the right. David Falcon, the isopropyl mix dries super quick, so make sure everything is in place first. Yeah, I have my pump bottles already set up, so they're just on the side ready to go from one to the other. You can always re-wet again with isopropyl. It doesn't dry that quickly in the UK because it's never that hot or whatever, but yeah, and the 2/3 water hangs around, so that's quite useful. One thing I didn't say, which I should, if you've sprayed, it's fine with the isopropyl alcohol, but if you spray glue for a spray bottle, when you've finished, take it over to the sink, get a little cup of water and spray it out, empty the cup and refill it with clean water and spray it out. I say that because it seems to, when you pump, put some of the stuff back down into the water. Spray it out until it's spraying perfectly clear and get that glue out of your pump and it will last longer. Otherwise, it'll be clogged for next time you try and use it. And you'll go, oh, everything, all my isopropyl alcohol's on. Oh, nothing's coming out. Some of them clog anyway. Still waiting for the freaky forest. Still just putting them on. Catherine Welling says, wow, that's amazing. Thank you very much. This actually took 3 or 4 days on and off. So it wasn't a 2-day one. But I wanted, some of it is waiting for paint to dry in that time. Norm says, this does look like the haunted forest where the flying monkeys ripped up the Scarecrow in the Wizard of Oz. Oh, we're not whipping up anybody in mine. Yeah, thanks, Digger. Giant Bull Monster says, these trees are looking just about perfect as is. Thanks, this is the last bit that's going on them. I just wanted to put some finer roots around the bottom because there's actually quite a lot in the photos, but I didn't think I'd get my ground in there if I put them all on at the beginning, so that's why these are going on later. And there's a lot of fans here for the Wizard of Oz forest at this bit. So Stephen says, funny thing is, the word warthog to you is something you'd associate with Halo. Halo's 20 years old. I didn't play it back then. I've only been playing it for, oh, is it 10 years or 8 years? Somewhere around there, quite a while. So that means warthog. But for Stephen, it's a tank busting aircraft. Oh, interesting. I didn't know such a thing existed. Well, I mean, yeah, tank busting aircraft. I didn't know it had a name, Warthog. Oh, come on, Kathy, hurry up with sticking all these bits of... When it comes to the final YouTube video, this will be like 10 seconds of footage that gets used. John Crooks, I can imagine little pairs of eyes peeping out of the hollows. Yeah, you really can on this. There's plenty of hollows for them to creep out of. And of course, there's stuff living in the water as well, remember. Just, yeah, it kind of eats R2, doesn't it? So, yeah. So, these look odd at the moment. And there we go, still falling off already. They look odd. I'm fully aware they look odd. They do twist round and straighten up a bit in a minute, but I shouldn't have put some perhaps so high up the trees. But when you look at the photos, there's a lot of hanging vines that are actually this colour. They're almost a straw colour. But the problem was to tie them into the tree trunks and make sure that they matched, because the bits nearer the tree trunks will presumably match that. And again, jute string. We're talking about cheap scenic materials. String is fairly cheap, and the bulk of this is paper mache, which was not cheap necessarily. Foil, which I stole off my mum when I ran out of mine, so that was very cheap for me. She did buy me another roll afterwards as well. And jute string and paint, and that's it. It's a lot of glue as well. So it's not a very expensive diorama so far. I've not gone out and bought anything for it, apart from some extra paper mache, because I used up all my celluclay. So it's not been an expensive diorama. Yes, I got sent the Green Stuff World micro leaves, but I'd use my own dried leaves otherwise, and I did use my own chamomile tea leaves, which were out of date when I put them into the scenery stock. So overall, the foam base came out of a skip. Well, the builder told me it was there and gave it me. And we're talking about free products. I posted on Instagram this week, and a lot of people came back and do the same. All the local builders, lockdown's been a godsend, because they've all been having extension work around me. Almost every house has had an extension, and almost every builder tells me when I walk past, oh, I've got some Celotex for you. And one builder actually puts little presents of it in black plastic bags in my porch. He's doing the house next door. And he also drilled the vent for me, you know, the big hole for the vent for me for free. It's a real sweetie. I mean, he's there for like a year almost doing the massive extension next door, and I think he feels guilty about the noise because he does know I do voiceovers in the day, and there are some days I'm like, God, I just wanted to finish the voiceover on this video, and he's just drilling. And yeah, I can't believe I'm still putting vines on. I really can't believe it. But, you know, if you just do one or two, they look odd. So what else is in chat? Ooh. Hi Roy. Roy Eltham's arrived. Eats R2 and spits him out, lol. Yeah, have you not seen that? It's he's obviously not tasty, R2. And R2 is the real hero of all of the Star Wars. He's the only guy who's made them all. And he knows everybody. Now, we were talking about at the beginning about free scenery material. And I wanted to just talk, we talked a lot about natural materials, and we talked about trees last week and twigs, and you can get a lot of twigs as well that are great for trunks and things like that. But it's not just stuff that you find outside. You know, I was talking about building supplies, and we've talked about stuff you can get from the builders merchants, but actually quite often So this is an interesting debate. Electric toothbrushes come with those little rings, coloured rings, and you're supposed to put a coloured one on to show which toothbrush is whose if there's more than one person in the house. Now, my toothbrush sits on its own, so it doesn't need the ring, so I never put them on. So I've kept all of those rings to detail some future projects. I keep failed 3D prints for future projects. I keep bits of sprue for future projects. Freaky vine moment. Keep watching the vines. I keep, this is going to sound very bizarre, roll-on deodorant balls. You can cut the balls out. I've kept loads of balls. I have no idea what I'm going to use them for, but I am going to use them. You know, bottle caps, some bottles. There's just so many things. If you want to see what you can make from junk, I really recommend Studson Studios' Howl's Moving Castle. I went and watched all the anime having seen that, and it's a good anime. Howl's Moving Castle. And he makes an entire moving castle about this big out of junk. It is an awesome build. It's truly awesome. It's well worth a YouTube video. My mum loved it. The whole family will love it. It's a family movie, effectively. There we go. Bits falling off, and look for the twisty bits. Oh, there he goes. It's just twisting away. Oh, yep. Yep. Oh, it's still twisting. Oh, they're all just moving. Oh, I'm falling off. That's a little pot of glue over there. Always have a pot of glue around. I went back somewhere different. So this is just literally water and water mixed with oil paint. So it's mostly water, just to tone them down a bit near the top. I don't mind the lighter colour, but you can see they just keep... Then they all twist together because they're next to each other, and they all start twisting together. It's really, really odd. You're just sort of working on it, and at the corner of your eye, you see things moving. I guess if you glued the bottom of the jute string, it wouldn't do it, but I wanted to dampen them to put them against the edge, but it's definitely freaky. So, Stephen, it's easy to forget that videos can take anything up to a month or more to complete, and editing is the thief of time too. Yeah, editing takes 2 or 3 days generally. The other thing that takes time is the final videos and photos, because you have to do a photo shoot. And you have to put everything on Instagram and Facebook. You have to do this, you have to do that. Do the final montage, make it look good. I am doing 2 dioramas at once at the moment because the basic stages for both of them are very, very similar. They've all got a picture frame base, sealed, foam on top, sculptor mould, plaster, and resin water. So I've used that a lot. And I'm doing 2 at once. So sometimes I do 2 at once if they're very similar. I try and always pair them up so they're similar. Yeah, it's important. And hi to Yasmina, who's just arrived. Yes, R2 is the main character, hero of the entire series. Royal, we're on the same page. Timber, I should make more videos, but the time it takes to edit puts me off starting. It's my worst bit is editing. I often end up doing it at the weekend just because I've put it off all week. And I have to get stuff out early for the patrons because they get early releases. So it's all finished a few days before, and actually often a week before now. But look, here's a close-up of them moving. Just moving on their own. I'm not even touching them and they're moving. It's just the water presumably untwining the twine. It's quite bizarre. Filender, that'll be handy someday. Tim, it's a good file. I have boxes of that'll be handy someday. Norman says, walk through the hardware stores here looking for bits and bobs and for diorama making. I follow someone, I think it's High Arc Foundry Gunpla, and he's forever posting, it could be Don Serratus, but I think it's High Arc Foundry Gunpla, bits from Amazon he's bought to go on knurled nuts, and then I actually used them for what they were meant to be used for. So Diorama Recipe, Fabio sent me a load of stuff, and I got it for the jungle waterfall, which is going to be really jungly. But these I picked these as well while he was saying have what you want. And I put off, I don't like getting free stuff, but I only get it from people I buy from anyway. And I've not bought from him, but I've seen it on a lot of YouTube channels, and it always looks really good stuff. But Green Stuff World I do buy from. They actually got in touch with me and went, we noticed you bought from us, would you like some stuff? And that was in March, and it took me this long to get around to get some stuff off them because I didn't have any projects I felt were appropriate. But these are all dried natural materials from Diorama Recipe, and they They're great. They're quite soft, so I guess they're cured with glycerin. And I put some of these extra ones in as twigs and logs and roots and whatever, because there's loads in there still to come. Again, just all glued with a little spot of white glue on the end. It's just out in a cup to the side, put in place. And then the grass heads you saw a second ago, I feel like they're an actual grass head that just has loads of smaller ones. And there are actually clumps of grass if you look in the movie. I didn't want to put too many on, none of this is too much. But what I did was I took a clump and I put it in, and it's too long, so I took it off and shortened it and put it back in just by twisting some together and putting a little bit of white glue on the end and just planting them, and they stayed upright. And it's not too many, there's 3 clumps, one's almost off camera. It's just enough to make it look like slightly more is there. It's just another layer. And that's what this is all about. It's about layers, building up layers. So, yeah. So, perlite, just the same here. More videos, I presume. Yeah, it's time. It is Vez and John and Cozzy 118 BMK. So, yeah, it's definitely creepy and it's alive. Cozzy 118 BMK keeps the inner Kinder Egg. Ooh. Tell you what are useful. Clear Christmas baubles. Buy them at Christmas time in various sizes. And those round bits are great for sci-fi helmets, mechs, whatever. Or other things. I need deworming. Giant boar monster, you are not wrong. They definitely need deworming. So a few people going on the vines, which, yeah, were creepy. So according to Tamsen, it's differential hydration of the fibres. The wetter fibres want to expand, the drier ones don't. Technical or freaky. So Mark says, loving watching this, Kathy. It's looking brilliant. I'm working on my Farquhar roads. Getting the right road colour is tricky. We'll send pictures. I struggle on road colours. Since I moved to warm grey rather than a black and white based grey, I think they've improved because I think the warmth just makes it look slightly more realistic. But yeah, definitely I struggle with getting the right road colour. It's really hard. Sometimes it just looks too dark. Other times it just looks too grey. It's difficult. It is definitely one of those colours that's hard to nail. Norm says the company's product line is amazing. Yeah, I've got a palm tree off them, one palm tree, the lone palm tree to go on my Pirates of the Caribbean, which saved me having to produce one, which is good because I've got to paint all the pirate zombie skeleton zombie thingies this coming week, and I'm playing Halo, so probably it'll be next week. Stephen Cameron, my videos are best when I keep quiet and don't show my face. I put my face a lot less in them recently. Some people do comment on it, but I don't put my face on as much. Mostly because people kept complaining they weren't getting close-ups, and it's hard to get my face in and put a close-up in. It just doesn't work. Jez Hunt, Artie was the hero, but everything he said was total filth, hence why they had to bleep out all his swearing. Oh, you hit the nail on the head there. Nick Forster says, Kathy, for a slate face, I've used one of those hairbrushes made with a few wire bristles and plastic balls on the end. This is used to furrow the sediment layer. Oh, interesting. I've got a very, very battered brass brush that I use for scraping lines into things, but I've not thought of using a hairbrush like that. I don't actually use a hairbrush. No, I never brush my hair. So I don't actually own one. That's a good idea. Timber doesn't show his face in vids, his sub might go down. Actually, I don't show my face in vids, but obviously for the live stream, you get me, even if only a miniature in the corner for the whole time. So this is this grass that was really good. It just looked amazing. You could just pluck it off and use it, and it looked, because it's got the little tips. Now you could get this yourself, this type of grass, and save, you can buy, I think AK Interactive do a preservative, but I've used glycerin in the past for moss. The trouble was I found the moss was quite brown. You might need to paint it. Diorama Prespa uses a lot of paler things and has dyed them. And I've got a variety of greens. I might well mist them with an airbrush. I don't know yet. We'll see what they look like when they're in place. We'll see. So Tamsin P says, the clear baubles are good for Boing Bubbles from Mega City 1. Okay, I believe you. Mega City 1. David Falcon agrees warm greys are the best. So if you don't have a warm grey and you're struggling with greys, go out and get one. It's just called warm grey. It's just got a bit of beige in it, a bit of brown. Really does make a difference. And Mark Rogerson, I did try mixing a warm grey, but it's too warm now, so I'll add a dash of green to neutralise a bit. Yeah, if you're using Payne's grey as your black, which is what I often do, it's a dark blue really, so that often will neutralise and tone things down a bit as well. Now, the backdrop. This ends on a complete disaster because I didn't get far enough that I could photograph the success at the end. So I'm using Fomex, it's 5mm or 3mm. I think one piece is 5mm and the rest of it's 3mm. If I have to carve it, I do 3mm, like if I have to cut out a shape. And I want to put the backdrop on, and so I want to paint the inside. And it's actually blue, it's like misty blue with dark blue looming trees in the background. So I sanded it well, because it's important to sand shiny surfaces if you're going to paint them. And then I stood in my kitchen doorway because it was raining and sprayed with an aerosol can and hoped most of it didn't blow back onto the windows, which a lot of it went on my wrist and hand, so let's hope the windows are going to be clean. And this is what it's like. It's just Halford's car primer, so that they're nice and primed. And then this looks okay. This isn't what you see at the end. This is what you see at the end of this video, but it's not what actually ends up on there because it just didn't work. So this is Payne's grey. You can see it's actually a dark blue when it's out. It's just a thin Payne's grey. And I wanted an ethereal effect, like Lord of the Rings ethereal. So I used my kitchen roll to blub this around in a very technical way because it was too thick and I could have thinned it more, but then the paint doesn't stick. It splits really badly. So I did this and smudged it around. And the kitchen roll is cheap and just started to bit straight away. So I ended up with loads of bits. I wasn't feeling it. And it was, by the end, it kind of came together. So there's a background spludge of Payne's grey, very thin, acrylic. And then there's a darker set of trees painted over it. I'll just leave that to play for a bit. Oh yeah, I did wonder if it was Judge Dredd, Tamsin. Yeah, of course, it would look good. I don't remember being bubbles in there, but I only watched the recent one about 6 months ago. Roads are never black, check out warm grey. Yeah, says David Falcon. My favourite Vallejo colour is black grey, or grey black. Black grey I think it's called, which I use instead of black. I never use black there, really, unless it's mixing in something. So yeah, here comes the dreaded background pieces. Don't do this at home. I really just, it took 3 days. 3 days. I ended up doing it at the weekend going, this isn't working. Came back the next day, still not working. Came back the next day, still not working. I sanded it back to the basic primer at one point just to get rid of all the paint lines. Oh, yeah, not good. I'm still not I'm probably about 90% happy at the moment, but I haven't tried them in place because I did them in oils in the end, and you'll see that on the next live stream because the edges hadn't dried, so I'm waiting for them to dry up. I quite liked it up to this kind of really sort of effect here. I liked it up until the very final moment, which is the day after I finished this live stream video, so you never get to see it, and it looked like a leopard spotted thing. So Timber says it's odd. Met a few fellow YouTubers recently and they recognised my voice. Didn't realise it was so distinctive. That's worrying. I'm not sure I'd recognise people by their voice, but I mean I'd recognise some that have a catchphrase like Luke APS Geek Gaming will go, "How do guys?" And you kind of know it's him from that. Stephen Cameron, a strange thing about road colour is modern SMA is designed to turn red as the bitumen wears off the top surface. That's really weird. It just goes grey by us still. Norma thinks Timbers does have a distinctive voice. And, yep, Lee, thank you. This looked all right. It just didn't stay like this, sadly. It's not. Yeah, this technique wasn't bad. It just didn't work with the final bit. Who farted? Have you ever completely given up on a diorama, never to return to it again? Well, you could say my Portrait is in that state at the moment, but I will go back to it. Yeah, what normally happens though is I buy loads of stuff and start it and then don't finish it. So it's not given up on, but it's not finished. So I have, one of the first things I 3D printed on my brand new Piopoly Phenom 2 years ago was a BT from FichtenFoo, and he is still in pieces, all the pieces printed out. They need final prepping because there's some lines on them and the odd hole that needs filling. Obviously I hadn't hollowed properly. Lounge floor, been there for 2 years. I mean, he wasn't always on the lounge floor. Sometimes he was on the kitchen surface, but no, he's now on the lounge floor. Yeah, wax on, wax off, says Timber. Splotch, technical term. Yep. Boeing appeared in some very early Judge Dredd stories in 2000 AD. I'm not a, Tamsin, I'm not a comic person, so I wouldn't have seen it. Yeah, this was all right, Norm. It looked all right until, and this is where it went wrong, I left it to dry, and then I was like, hair dried it to dry actually, because I was in a rush to get it done. I was like, this looks all right. It's not, it's probably even slightly better than the final result I've got now. And it was okay, but I thought, oh, it's a bit too blue. So sensible as I was, I thought I'll spray the brown acrylic wash over it because that'll sort it out. Brown acrylic wash, you know, it'll just brown it up a bit. It'll dry nice and hazy, it's a wash. It'll be fine. No, it wasn't fine. It dried spotty. It dried in, it was like leopard spots all over it. It was awful. It was kind of soul destroying. So then I tried painting it with more brown in it. I've just gone blue again now, so it's literally just blue. I did like this better. You can never reclaim the early paint. It's gone. Once the next layer's on and it's rubbish, it's gone. Lee wants to know what the best way to do pond. I'm going to do resin for this. Self-levels. I find it hard to get other products than resin to self-level well, because when they dry they shrink slightly, acrylic ones, so I would always use resin. Who farted? Tim's thought paint trees on background then cover with slightly opaque clear sheet to blur them. Wow. Actually, whilst you're watching that, I'll get what it looks like now. So that's, it's still slightly tacky on the edges, but it's been drying for like a week. This is what it looks like now. So this is the final. Which way do I get that to go straight? There we go. That's the final version. This way. Get back a bit. You might see it all. There we go. It's that brown wash that killed it. That just killed it. It was horrendous. Don't do that brown wash. But that's what it looks like now. But it's actually, I think it's dry. Yeah, it didn't dry on the edges for ages. So yeah, I don't know. I may yet do something with it. The thing is, you only see very little bits of it. Bear in mind, for that one, it's the long side. I don't think you really see it. You only see it really on the end one, which is this. Isn't even this one. It's the other shorter one. So I'm going to see how much is visible because there's vines and all sorts of stuff over it. And so, but I haven't been able to hold it in place. Ooh, am I there? I think I'm at the end there. Yep. Haven't been able to hold it in place because it's been so sticky on the edges, because I'd obviously fluffed off the edges and it's been all over my hands for weeks. A week. It's been sat on the heated kitchen floor on little pots drying. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to try it in place when these dioramas are off there and I can check what it looks like and check the colour tone. And it may be that I go over it with a slight brown oil wash glaze or something if it's looking too blue, which is my worry. But I'll check it against the photos. I think it will look too blue, but it's where it is now. There we go. What time is it? Ooh, 54. So that's the end of all the modelling that I've done. So let's just run down chat and answer any final questions. Where have I got to? Thought paint trees on background, then cover with slightly opaque clear streak to blur them. I could do. Just the trouble is, clear sheets are often shiny. That was just worried about them. Thanks, Nick. Woodruffy says the trees look amazing. Thank you. Andrew Estep. I once worked in a theatre shop, and there was a few times when I watched the painters do a sky background, and 7 or so did one. They kept swapping spots every few feet as they raised the drop. I can imagine it's just so hard to get backdrops, and they're so important. So I guess each had a distinctive style, left hand or righties, or just the way you pie paint. So yeah, but it's interesting they did that. So Nick also thinks baubles are useful. See, just got to get your Christmas baubles in at Christmas. Thanks, Jez. He says it looks cool. Anfield World, thank you. Norm, that's better. It's blurry. Yeah, that was the problem with that first one. The edges in the movie are blurry. They're not distinct, and it was too distinct. I just need to see. I think the colour might be too blue. That's my worry. It may need to be a bit lighter, in which case I could put a wash over it, but it starts getting a problem with it. Washes don't dry evenly when they're thin, so I need to think about it. But there won't be a lot of it. There definitely won't be a lot of it visible. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see it next time. So what else have we got? Stephen Cameron, my current small project is a poacher's bothy diorama using a Hornby 4-wheel coach body and Auntie Kathy's magic formula, Targrout and IPA. Oh, well, let's hope it comes out well for Auntie Kathy. Send me a picture and I'll coo over it. Yeah, so Lee from Anfield, thanks. He says, good stream. See you on the next one later all. Take care. And I'll wind it up. I felt like I just galloped off last time because I don't want to go over the 2 hours. You've all had your fill by the end, I suspect. But thank you very much for watching, especially if you've been here for all 2 hours. But if you watch it on catch up, don't feel guilty. You just can't chat with me live, but that's fine. You probably do something far more exciting than watching paint dry. And for all of you that have joined, thank you so much. It does mean a lot that you've spent your Sunday evening sitting here listening to me talk about painting trees and sprinkling on tea leaves. It's fun to do. This is a fun diorama because it's something everybody knows. Most people have probably seen The Empire Strikes Back at some point in their lives. A lot of women maybe not, but men mostly have. So it becomes a sort of something that everybody can understand. But if you like my railroad content, don't worry, you'll get a lot of it next year. So Cosy118 BMK asked, do I recommend Wooden Scenic's Deep Pool Water Murky? I've never used it, but Luke Towan melted his foam underneath because it was so hot when it set. So there is definitely something about if you're going to put something plastic in there or you're doing it on foam, you need to put something, quite a thick layer of sculptor mould, or it will melt things. So if you're doing a deep pour of it. So that's the only thing I know against it. It is very quick to set. They used it on the Great Model Railway Challenge. Aberdeen used it and it came out fine there and it's set overnight. Whereas my deep pour that I'm going to use for the Pirates of the Caribbean, which is going to be this deep, that's a 72-hour cure. Yeah, that's not good. So thank you everybody. Thank you for coming. Thanks Norm, Digger and Timber, who are my moderators, for all their hard work in keeping you guys, you rowdy guys, in order. And I hope you enjoyed it. If you've got any questions, you can drop them in the comments and I'll answer them, because we're running out of time for the chat. But it's been great being here, and take care everybody. And because I'm not going to see you or talk to you now until next year, have a great Christmas. I hope you get some great stuff under the tree for modelling. If not, go out and pick up some dead leaves and make yourself feel better. Perhaps buy a kitchen blender to blend them with and a few sieves. But have a great time, and I'll see you in the new year. Take care. I could just do thanks for watching and then end stream.